Today I'm going to show you a procedure of post cores that can be done by two ways. This will also end up with a different kind of casting, which won't be an induction casting, but will be done by flame with a broken arm casting machine. So procedure number one is when the dentist will build up in the patient's mouth a core with Duralay, and will send to the lab the piece in Duralay, which will be directly sprued and casted. So it's called Direct Postcore. Then the second case is a case where an impression is sent to the lab, and in the impression you can see right there, there is the impression for building up by the lab the post core. So what we do, we develop a model with a die preparation. Here it is. And on this base, we will proceed with building up in the lab the post core. So one is built directly in the patient's mouth and is accurate, and the accuracy is done by the dentist in the patient's mouth, and the other procedure goes through an impression of the patient's core or preparation, and the core is done by the technician in the lab. But what will be nice and most important is to see in this procedure and to compare the casting done in a traditional way, which means with a metal ring being sprued and casted in a broken arm casting machine. So my sprue sits here, my post core sits here waiting for my next post core to get ready. And as you can see, what I have done is I started to build it up. I put some plastic frames inside that go all the way down into the channels, and I started building up some wax around it until I will build up the whole core, and we will see next how it will look. Before I end up building the core, the post core, I actually pull it out from the channels, and I make sure that this lower part, which will be cemented in the mouth, is in good condition before building up the rest, and that it does slide out, because there might be some divergencies here into pulling this out. And then once the job is finished, it's a shame to see it come apart because we had some problems from the starting. So we make sure that all the problems are out the way, and then we proceed further with this job. In this stage, my post core has been built up around the preparation, respecting the contour of this model here. And we can notice on the model that there is another preparation, and this is another core that we have done in the past that is waiting for this one to be finished. So we can proceed building two PFMs on them, two porcelain fused to metal crowns. And next step will be skinning off most of the wax to make it most similar to this core right here, and then we can proceed with the spruing. Okay, finally I have shaped up this core. I have trimmed my margins. We can see it here in my base Accotrack, and that will be it. Now next step will be the spruing, getting ready for the spruing and investing. Okay, things keep going. At this point, before spruing, I will be choosing the section of my my spruing channel, and this is a 3mm because I will have much more metal to fill up the casting of this post core compared to this other post core. So I will need for my metal to have a larger channel to flow through compared to this 2.5mm square section rod. It's a square section which will be used for the post core that our dentist achieved in the patient's mouth. Now I would like to spend a minute about these two methods because you see here this has been done exactly on the patient, plus has been used one material, which is Duralay. And while this material was setting up, if we're going to have to look at things and do an analysis about how this material did compare to the wax, how this material kept its precision compared to the wax workout. At this point, we would say that only one material has been involved in this working process compared to the post core done on the model, because once it's done on the model, we do have more than one material. We'll have to keep in mind that the first material that we had to deal with was the impression material, which has a margin of error when it sets up. Then we had to deal with the dye material, the gypsum, which has another contraction and expansion, so it might give a margin of error. And at last, the wax. So we deal with 1, 2, 3 materials before having our core. Now what that means, that in the game of the setup of 3 different materials, if we have a margin of error of 1 plus 1 plus 1, we'll have a margin of error of 3. While instead, in the game of achieving this post core in Duralay with only one material involved, then in this case we do have only one as numeric, if we suppose as a numeric margin of error, and that compares, and it's against a margin of error of 3 done by the wax up on the die and taken from. But in this case there's a series of things that have to be evaluated by the doctor when this is done, because sometimes it's not always possible, like in this case, to work on the patient and get this type of Duralay post core done, and this can be for a series of reasons why the patient doesn't collaborate, or because it's in a section of the mouth where it's too difficult to deal with for the dentist. There are always some things that need to be thought about. So I would say at this point that you cannot every time get things done in this way. But anyway, now we do get ready for the spruing, and that's going to be the next step, and we will see these once they are put up in the different realized in the cylinder. Like we will be putting these sprues with the coping on the base. They will be put here, and we'll see that. Then we have the cylinder. This is a metal cylinder, so it will not be an expansion-free system. We do have the liner, which is the liner, and we will be using the sticky wax to keep our post with the spruing channel on the base. And we'll see that soon.